Hi, hello. So we, you know, most lie in uh, in the 60 was the story that we was landing on the moon. Now, of course, that we never was landing there. All about what they tell us is a lie. And today I'm gonna prove you why the moon landing is a fake. And trust me, we never been there. We never been uh, on the moon. And now I'm gonna prove you why we never been there. Okay, so in '69, when we was landing there, when we was landing on the moon on July 69, in July of 1969, um, you know, uh, when when we was landing on the moon, so this this event, this particular moment was publicized day after in the newspaper, and that's exactly what the men say in this video clip. So think about it. If that was publicized day after, so this is the mostly lie that was happening in the 60s. Landing on the moon? No way. You must have to be kidding me. Okay, so let's let's debunk this idiot guy from the video. But I must say that this occult guy from the flat earther was asking a very beautiful question. So he claimed that we wasn't landing there because the day after that was published in the newspaper and the satellite didn't was existing yet. So I gonna say what the science even not supported, but I gonna say that we was I think that we not this is not for the first time that we was went to the space. I think that went to the space, even million years ago. But let's say that only in the 16 and satellite didn't was too much. But this is not the case that I would like to talk about it. If there is satellite or not satellite, it is not, the issue that I would like to talk about it. I just would like to talk about our possibility that was published in the newspaper, if the moon is too far. So first of all, the moon is not away from from our globe. The far of 300,000 kilometers. The moon is not so far from us, from the couple of 300,000 kilometers. For example, the idiot guy from the video clip believes that the moon is just far, 2,000 miles from the globe. So, because of that I think that it was possible that we was landing in the moon. Because you believe by yourself that the moon is just far from the globe, 2,000 kilometers, and not 300,000 kilometers. So and because of that, we really went there. Because the moon, what you believe, is not too far from our globe. So I have to give you, of course, that they will give you evidence and proof that the day after we was landing there, it really was publishing in the newspaper. So I believe that all of us, even of course we not being exist when this was happening, is the story about the Titanic ship who was sinking. So for example, this is Titanic ship. This is not Titanic because I take the ship from 15th century, but let's say this is Titanic. Let's say. So if you heard about the Titanic disaster, the flat earther, they are so stupid. They are average students, so I don't sure if they heard about the Titanic story, but I am here to help them. So most of you, at least, was heard about the disaster of Titanic. The Titanic was sinking on the water after this ship was crashing on the big rock. Yes, so this is a Titanic. Again, I take the ship from the 16th century, but let's say this is the Titanic. It was crashing on the rock and sinking after that. So I repeat, this is the Titanic, and the Titanic was sinking on the water, and the Titanic was sinking on the water after the Titanic was crashing on the big rock. So, the Titanic's disaster was publicized day after the disaster. And the question is how? I wrote the newspaper, from the keeping of the historical, I wrote what was happening in Titanic. And the question is how? I repeat, the Titanic disaster was in the space of the water, in the space on the water, yes, in the space on the water. It's not what's happening in, it's not the disaster of Eiffel Tower. Let's say that, let's say that Eiffel Tower will collapsing in 1915. In 19, I think the Titanic. The Titanic disaster. I don't. It was happened in 1912. In 1912, 15 on 15 of April. But let's say this is. I repeat, this is the Titanic. This is not the April. That the collapsing in the middle of the town. The Titanic disaster. The Titanic disaster, was happening on the space, on the sea, on the space of the sea, of the space of the sea, and that was publicized day after in the newspaper. Now, how possibility, the day after the Titanic disaster was publicized in the newspaper, if satellite still didn't was existing. So the phone didn't was existing, but the Titanic was somehow succeeding to sending a message. So I repeat, if the Titanic disaster was publicized on the newspaper day after, and that's at least more than 42 years, before we landing on the moon. So in the mostly worst technologically in 2012, what the primitively called from the flat earth don't know is how that was how the Titanic disaster was publicized on the newspaper. That even before the war existing. So that's because now I ask the question, and smartly people like you don't believe to the U.S. government. The U.S. government, yes, the same institution who sent and landing the TikTok for the cult of the flat earther a stage. So that's because the satellite, we go to the space 1 million years ago, not what the U.S. government, claim. And that's the only answer how the Titanic's disaster was publicized day after. And yes, phone was existing in 1912. If you saw, the Circus movie of Charlie Chaplin, so you will realize that a mobile phone was existing in you know in Turkey. So you know this is for today is the question, is the answer why the day after we were landing on the moon that was publicized in the newspaper. Because think about it, if the Titanic's disaster was publicized day after the newspaper, and how many people dead and how many people will survive, and they also was new where the emergency ship ready to take. That's because the satellite, yes, being exist in this year. This is not what the U.S. government institutions who sent the cult of flat earthers. Most of them, they are average people. They just they are very worse in mathematically. They very worse in the physically in the physics, but they also very worse in the history. So that is for today. Thank you. God bless you all.